So the name is, of course, Repack. And for what we're doing here, it's a 160 travel, 27.5-inch wheel bike for all mountain enduro racing. And it's just was obvious that the two fit together, Repack and enduro. And there's probably a couple more things that most people don't know about, and that's that in the early days, after we had done a bunch of Repack downhill races, people were going, hey, well, what about racing uphill too? And combining the two. And Alan Bonds came up with what was called his enduro race in the summer of 1977, and the course it actually finished by going down Repack. And so the names enduro and Repack have been joined at the hip since the beginning, and so naturally when we're coming along with such a full suspension bike as this one, it was just the perfect name for it. So obviously what you're seeing is that mid-link, different placement. Think of it as a 4-bar. You got your 4 pivots, and this pivot here is, you might compare it to the one that would be for the horse link, or for short link bikes, it'd be that rear one on the 2-set. Both have their advantages and disadvantages, and moving that link forward from the horse link gives you a more rigid rear triangle. You can connect the dots together more efficiently to give you a more solid structure than with a rear pivot bike. And compared to the short link bikes, moving it back puts a lot less bearing load in the design. You can imagine the leverage ratio from the wheel back here all the way up to those front pivots. This is going to make a smoother riding bike and give you a much longer bearing life too.
So this pivot for 160 millimeters of rear wheel travel actually only moves about 3 degrees. So that was a key component in the design, was recognizing that having this pivot move less gives you a much smoother travel. And it's been borne out in all the testing we've done, so I can't wait for you guys to ride it. It's good to point out too that when you're designing your full suspension kinematics, it all can work good and look great on a computer, but if your rear end is flexing throughout that suspension travel, it completely changes your design. And so a lot of times you might have something that looks great and it rides like not very well. So we really focused on making this a super rigid system. So these 2 pivot points here, the main ones, those are 15 millimeter through axles, and it's actually an axle that goes all the way through, and it's a collet system. So when you tighten down this fastener on this side, there's a taper washer in there. So it's loading it in 2 different planes, and it makes it really, really rigid. These ones are also 17 millimeter aluminum hardware, so we really focused on saving weight and taking advantage of the way we're doing on hubs now with through axles. Like any bike with a chainstay pivot, it's lengthening throughout the entire amount of travel. But what we do, we alter that, they call it DCSL, so the change in chainstay lengthening, it's higher in the beginning of the travel and then less at the end. So you want to have that for your climbing mode. And when you guys hopefully get to ride it, we've heard all day that everyone says how good this bike climbs for how much travel it has. It's 160 millimeters of travel.
Just run it wide open, no platform.
Yeah, you don't even need a climb
Take advantage
mode
of the traction going uphill with a full suspended bike. I'm a big fan of 29-inch wheels. I like the difference between the bottom bracket height and the axles of the wheels, the fulcrum points, and that gives you great advantage, more than just rolling diameter, but having the fulcrum differential allows you to pull in the front wheel some, have a little steeper head angle, that is, because I call it riding in a valley of confidence. You have the valley walls high, right? You're less likely to pitch over going downhill, and you're less likely to pitch back going uphill. You got better traction, you got better handling. Pull in that front wheel some, you're going to have, you stay hooked up through the turn much better, and everything to be gained from those bigger wheels. But you get to a point like with a 160 millimeter bike, all mountain enduro type bike, and 29-inch wheels, it's going to be a lot of weight to be thrown around. Those tires can weigh over a kilogram. And so to keep things under control and the chainstay short, we chose the 27.5-inch wheel bike for this level.
It's an ISCG 05 chain guide mount, so maybe you can kind of see it under there. We run all these with the Shadow Plus rear derailleur, so it has a clutch system, which it's been working great. So if you wanted to put a chain guide on and do a 1x, you totally can. And it also has routing for a dropper post, so it is pretty modular in that respect. Yeah. External only at this point, yeah. So the bike is only available in aluminum currently, and external dropper. It's got 3 levels, so Repack, Expert, Pro, and Team. This is the Team Edition, which is XT, and then it's an SLX bike with an XT rear derailleur, and then a Diore bike with an XT rear derailleur, and that's Fox on the top 2, and then these great X Fusion forks on the Repack Expert. And one thing I'd like to chat about is that geometry. We have a big advantage working with Joe, because he was doing those first bikes back in the 70s and was really pushing 26-inch geometry forward. And when we were adapting a bike, a long travel bike for 27.5-inch wheels, Joe was really able to hone in on some of the advantages, I should say, that big wheels offer that not everyone is doing. So our head tube angle is 68 degrees on these bikes, and that goes in towards taking advantage of that big wheel and tucking it under you a little bit for better traction. It's already a higher axle, so it's already a very stable bike. And
but that axle differential allows you to take advantage of a little steeper head angle. It's still 68 degrees. It's an enduro bike. Maybe some might be 64, 66, but all reports from trying out the pudding here today at Bike Demo has been that this is a great handling bike. So happy to hear.